good evening and welcome.
What day is it today, Deb?
I think it's Friday.
And who is our guest?
I have no idea.
Not this again.
I know, but one thing I do know is it's Codes of the Unknown.
Oh, yeah. Good evening and welcome. Sorry, Deb can't be with us tonight. She's been having car and bike problems, so it's just me, unfortunately, for you lot. But tonight we are joined by Nathanial Gillis, and he will be discussing the research of the devil, demons, unclean spirits with a twist that believes there could be a connection to the implants found in people who have been abducted by aliens, or the soul hunter himself, Molter. Good evening, Nathaniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Andy. And hello, Codes of the Unknown. I'm excited to be with you all today and talk about my research.
Excellent. So, right, I'll start off then. How old were you when you had your first paranormal experience?
I always say 8.5 because when I was that young, them halves mattered.
Yeah.
So 8.5, 9-ish, and my parents had actually moved into a new house.
Yeah.
And when I was touring the room that would soon become mine, I witnessed a full-bodied apparition underneath the bed.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to this phenomenon. And then upon moving into the house, that entity evolved, or some could say even mutated, into something far more malevolent and haunting. So from the ages of 8 to about 14, I coexisted with an entity that was pretty horrific. It was the most diabolical haunting I've experienced, and I've had a lot of cases.
Jeez. So how did it affect your childhood? Like every day growing up?
Deeply. Yeah. So the phenomenon itself evolved. So it went from just a full-bodied apparition of a little girl, to shadow figures. At nighttime, when everybody would go to bed, I would hear something displacing its weight on our wooden floors.
Yeah.
At the height of the phenomenon, I was having the same nightmare every night, and it was of someone committing suicide.
Oh.
And then I would wake up and just paralyzed in terror, and that entity was in that room. I could feel it. It was almost like it was pulsating.
Yeah.
So that was my introduction, my confrontation with whatever these things are. And it shaped me. It shaped my worldview. It proved to me without a shadow of a doubt that there is something that goes bump in the middle of the night And that's what inspired me to get into this field, to not just help myself understand what I was experiencing, but study it as a whole, as a body of work.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. So, did it make you feel different as you was growing up to like everyone else, all the other kids that you grew up with?
Yeah, I was very much just kept to myself, and that
Yeah.
was unlike me. I'm a very outgoing person. I love people, but at that time of my life, I was failing my grades at school. I was completely detached from my family, and it was a lonely road. It was traumatic
Yeah.
too. So I like to tell people, like, and we talked about this off air a little bit, that once somebody
Yeah.
has such a profound experience, it kind of gives them some immunity to regular haunting phenomenon. So like when we
Yeah.
watch horror movies, it's like, okay, it's kind of hokey compared to
Yeah.
what we've actually experienced.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with it. Just to give you some of my history, I grew up mostly in a pastor's home. I did grow up prior to that. Before my dad was a pastor, I grew up in the evangelical movement.
Yeah.
And what was so difficult for me was to kind of understand what I was experiencing at home was different than what the church people told me it was. They
Right.
were completely different. And so a part of my evolution has been to kind of grow out of the dogma and grow into the data.
Yeah.
That's where we are today.
Yeah. One question's just come up now from Rick Allen. I was going to ask it, but did the rest of the family see any of the entities or have any connection with them?
My father encountered something in the house. That was the only other person.
Yeah.
And he only told me that after we had left.
Wow.
Yeah, we were
How long
actually
was you there
moving
for?
about 4 or 5 years.
Right. So quite a while.
Yeah, so it was so funny, man. So like we're packing up all of our stuff, and my dad, he goes, I didn't want to ever tell you this because I didn't want to scare you. And I'm like, okay. He's like, but
Yeah.
I always like whenever he was alone in the house, he would always feel like something was there watching him, and he believed that someone had died there,
Right.
possibly by their own hand. So that was the extent of their experience with the phenomenon.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So
It was
when?
not fun.
No, I can imagine. So when you moved out, I'm guessing everything stopped. Or did anything move with you?
No, it didn't. Well, I'll say this. When we got into the new house, it was all the way across town.
Yeah.
There was a night when I had a bar stool in my room, and then I had a glass of water on top of the bar stool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like the entity that I'd experienced in the past, because whenever that entity manifested, you could feel it.
Right.
I mean, Andy, I could smell it as a child. I could smell it. It smelled like sulfur or like the corpse.
Right.
And this was different, energy built up in that room in the new house, and suddenly that glass of water flew across the room, hit the wall. That was pretty much it. I was never haunted by anything else. Even when I do cases, I know people ask me, I don't deal with attachments in terms of my own self.
Yeah.
But it's so wild. It wasn't as much that I was experiencing a haunting in this new house as it was that I began to help people. That's when I started really picking up things from people and telling them, hey, listen, I know you're feeling this way. I just kind of want to encourage you. And I kind of leaned heavily into my empathic nature. So yeah, it was different. It was still spiritual, but it was a better experience for me.
Yeah. Rick's he's just another one. I'm sorry, it's in relation to what we're talking about. He wants to know, were there themes to the dreams?
Yes, it was all black and white, and it was repetitive. It was like a loop.
Right.
I would be walking into a park. They would have a shelter where people would have birthday parties and family reunions.
Yeah.
There would be two young men with their backs turned towards me. They would be sitting down on top of a picnic table. Now, here's what's interesting. I need everybody to pay attention to this. This gets really deep really quick. As an 8-year-old kid, I had no frame of reference for drug addiction.
Right.
None. I didn't even know what pot was. Right? I had a neighbor that smoked it, and he just said, don't tell anybody about it. I just thought, well, that's weird cigarettes. I had no concept of it.
Yeah.
So no frame of reference for addiction or anything of that nature. But in the dream, the young man on the left, he had a needle buried into his arm.
Right.
Meant nothing to me. And then the young man on the man on the right had a needle in his arm. The man on the left was the one that would always turn around, look at me, make eye contact, grin, and then pull out a black 357 Magnum, stick it in his mouth, and pull the trigger.
Oh, sure.
I'd wake up and just that feeling, that being was in the room. And so what's wild about this is not only did I not have a correct historical reference for what I was witnessing, but it was a loop. So every night, whenever I would slip into a dream, it was that dream.
Yeah.
It was waiting for me to kind of engage it. And it was repetitive to the point where I was staying up all night, and I didn't want to close my eyes because I was afraid I was going to go and meet that entity in the dream.
Yeah.
And it got so bad that I would have to go to school the next day, and I would just pass out at school. Hadn't slept in 24 hours. I'm wore out.
Yeah.
And so I began to fail my grades. I had to talk to the principal about it. They called my parents in. My parents were saying, he's dealing with something. We're working with it. We're trying to figure it out. But it was a wild experience. It wasn't just that it could see me. It was almost that it wanted me to realize I was being watched. It wanted me to feel seen by it. And so it was a traumatic point in my life, but thankfully, I don't have to go through that anymore. And now, whenever that entity, sometimes it'll kind of visit me. It's almost like I've outgrown it, and it no longer has any more power.
Right. So, do you get anything now? Did you say?
In terms of that entity,
the dreams are whatever it was that was making contact with you.
Well, the only other dream like that I've had, which this is wild, was when I was engaged. It was a Friday night, Saturday morning. I'm sleeping, she's sleeping. And in this dream, there is this featureless shadow woman that is on top of me in the dream.
Right.
And I realize it's a spiritual attack, because it's not just what this is what a lot of movies try to replicate, but they can't. It's not just the manifestation, it's the feeling of it, the presence. And so I knew I was being attacked by this entity. And when I wake up out of the dream thinking that, okay, everything's fine, no, the entity was actually on me.
Oh.
In real life.
In real life.
Right. Yep. That was wild.
Shit.
So other than, so I'm looking at my I thought it was my fiance, and I'm trying to wake her up saying, hey, is this you? Is this you? Is this you? That's what I was doing. And then slowly it just kind of got off and faded into the darkness.
Yeah.
So that was the only other spiritual attack that reaches the degree of the attack site experience back in the day. Other than that, thankfully, I've been untouched.
Right. Wow. But you're thankful of that now, aren't you?
Yes. No doubt, man. No doubt.
So another question from Rick. He wants to know, do you believe that the dreams came from an outside force, i.e. demons?
Well, there are what are called dream demons, but what we're trying to do right now, looking at the data, is do they exist in this dimension, and they're triggering dream states in us?
Yeah.
Right? Are they hacking our dreams, or are they hacking our dreams to step into reality? So are they tangible beings that are using our dream states to attack us?
As a gateway, like a gateway.
Right. Or are they using our brain patterns as the mortal portal, another one, to step into our lives? Now, within the abduction phenomenon, even in demonological texts, these beings do have the ability to induce a dream state in you, just to sometimes deceive us into believing, okay, what's really happened to me is not really happening to me, right?
Yeah.
It's just a dream.
Wow. Sorry, I'm just checking the.
It's okay. We're good, man. These are good questions. Keep the questions up. These are amazing questions.
Right. So I'll jump to the first question, then come back through them, just that they were more relevant at the time. So this is one from Nickname. Could you please explain demons and your work?
It's a broad question. And I'm going to hope to do that today, Nickname. And I'm glad we have a little bit more than an hour, because it is extensive, and it's wide and it's deep. And so sometimes it takes a while for me to flush out these concepts to kind of tie them together into
do you want to do that? Do you want to do that in the second half then?
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, because then we can get go through the questions now,
There are going to be a lot more questions afterwards, too. So that's awesome, too.
Well, I thought if you do all the questions, then we'll get a lot more understanding on what you do and how you do it and where everything's coming from. And then, is that good with you?
That's perfect. That's perfect, sir.
Excellent. Right. So then next question is from Nickname again. Oh, where did it all start for you? Well, I think I covered that, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just the experience. It's a good question. What I always dealt with was the fact that, why was I afraid of it? Was it employing a fictitious fear, a manufactured terror in me in order to feed off of what I was manifesting? And so what I had to do is I had to create a coping mechanism within my little body and my mind to where I would tell myself, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And that's and it's just wanting to be afraid of it. But if I can tell myself it's not worthy of fearing, and I'm not saying it worked, right? Some days it did, other days I literally had to coexist with it.
Right.
It was there with me when I went to bed, when I took a shower. It was always present. But the more I tried to hypothesize what I encountered, that's when the big questions started to arise. Who was it? What was it? When was it?
Yeah.
Why did it victimize me and not my family? First of all, what was I smelling when I first went into the room? It smelled like a corpse.
Mm.
So all of these questions, they really inspired me to dive into ancient manuscripts and what our ancestors had to say about this. And God help me, not modern researchers. I love modern researchers. I am one of them.
Yeah.
But I think that there does exist a breadth of work and research that transcends all that. It goes back in the late Iron Age, and we have experiencers that recorded what they encountered. And so that's what I kind of poured myself into, to get a better understanding, kind of unite history together, both ends of it, to get a better understanding of what we're dealing with. That's really what inspired me deeper to get into this work.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So nicknames and follow up from that. Do we have the ability to experience this phenomena, or does Nathaniel have other theories, data?
I think everybody has the ability to experience it, but that doesn't mean the phenomenon will manifest itself to you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and of course, the data does suggest that some experiencers have various levels of experiences. Not everybody's going to meet an apparition. It doesn't mean the people who've met an apparition are better than those who haven't. Let's put that to rest.
Yeah.
Right. Because what we're having now in the field is that, well, I'm an experiencer and, I've seen a lot and you've seen nothing compared to what I've seen. And it comes a competition.
Yeah.
Where we have the anointed telling people who are, so that's always been the issue. So that's where I'm at with it. But everybody has the ability to experience it. Yeah. It's just not that sometimes the phenomenon will not trigger that within us. How about that?
Yeah. No. Cool. Thank you.
Oh man.
You okay?
I'm good, man. We're doing
you need to get a drink or anything?
No. I've got.
Yeah. If you do,
water. I got water and cough drops.
Perfect. Right. So next question is from Raquel again. He wants to know, why are shadow entities on the increase? Is this a sign of the end of times?
I think it is. The phenomenon is ramping up to something.
Yeah.
I think that and I say this with all respect, that I think they're bleeding through experiencers and abductees, and they're looking for applications now. They're auditioning for a role, it seems to be. So with shadow figures, again, you guys are going to understand my theory here. I am a proponent of the unified field theory. I believe we're dealing with one source of the phenomenon. And I think the data supports that. So what I'm going to say is, yes, the phenomenon will manifest more in one area. And it's seemingly right now shadow entities and these things that call themselves extraterrestrial.
Yes.
So they're both fronts of the same phenomenon, but things are hyping up to something here.
Right. Yeah. So that was my next question for you. Do you think whether they're the same thing, or is there a connection between aliens / demons?
Yes. question I get asked most often is, do I believe aliens are demons or demons are aliens? Well, I think that the current definition of demon that was dominated by the Vatican does not fit the blueprint of what these are. And the reason that's not the case is because the Vatican doesn't tell us who demons are. History does. Right. And I say that with all respect. We've got to look at the data here. If you go back to the correct interpretation of what a demon was, it was a deceased, disembodied person. That's why the exorcistic rite comes out of Numbers chapter 19, verse 11, or chapter 11, verse 11. And it was never horns and hooves. It was about cleansing someone from corpse pollution, literally disembodied consciousness. And so if we look at what I consider to be the Molters, what we're looking at throughout all of history is that the disembodied wanted a body. And so they would, through what's called the red rite, this is fascinating, they would dispossess their body. They would form a relationship with the woman. Hello, UFO abduction. They would inseminate her with a fetus. Hello, missing fetus syndrome. And then after 4 months, they take that fetus and then possess it as their own body.
Ah.
We see that now through the lens of ET because that's what they're telling us they are, right? Yeah. But we really have no evidence of that outside of them giving us, this is what I am. So I think that in order to ask the question correctly, we have to get an earlier definition of what a demon was before it was reincorporated into the Catholic tradition. And I can go down those scriptures, we do all that. But I think, again, where it sits, that demonology is an incomplete answer to an already incomplete question. So we have to go through the text and pull out concepts of what we're dealing with, because I think there is mounting evidence that these beings are not aliens and they're not the traditional interpretation of what a demon is. But there is something there.
Yeah.
It exists.
It's just finding what it is.
Right.
Right. Okay. Next question then. So this is from Rick Allen again. Were you religious before the encounters, or did the encounters drive your religion?
Well, I think it's a deep question. I'm going to try to give you a deep answer too. My parents went to church, but I was so young, I had no concept of what church was. Church to me was Sunday school, snacks, and an hour and a half later, I'm back playing video games or something. But what it did, though, it did seem to awaken a spirituality in me. I mean, when you're a kid going to bed at night and you have no other explanation for what you're experiencing, you only have a few options. Either I was losing my mind, or there's something that we would consider to be spiritual occurring. I will say, after months and months and months of dealing with it, after feeling suicidal myself as a kid, 8 years old.
Jesus.
There was a moment when I just kind of gave up.
Yeah.
And I crawled up in a ball and just in a room and started crying and said, God, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
I'm tired of it. I'm tired. Like, it's breaking my will. It's like my body's suffering. And that's when that being, or whatever it was, that presence, it just kind of dissolved. The heaviness lifted, everything changed. Yeah. So I think it did kind of drive me into, at least if it didn't drive me, it triggered something in me. It awoke a spirituality within me as a child that possibly, I think they knew it existed. I was just ignorant of it. So I think that's what happened.
Right. Thank you. So Rick's just put up in relation to the last question. If they can build UFOs, why can't they just build hosts for their souls?
They can. They just can't build fetuses.
Right.
Now, again, it's a good question. When you go into what's called the Apocrypha of John, they have to have a womb. These beings have always operated through what I call mortal portals of wombs and words. In the Apocrypha of John, it's a commentary on Genesis 6 and the Nephilim, but it talks about what these beings were doing in the late Iron Age. They were performing what's called the red rite. And a red rite is performed by a high magician.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, when their bodies were dying, they would form a relationship with the woman. They would inseminate her. This is what we call the incubi and succubi phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right? It's all the same stuff. We just have different terms for it. And then when their body died, they would have created a fetus again to possess. Now, the Apocrypha of John says it like this. It says that they stared into the eyes of the female during the insemination. Now, this is another common motif in the UFO abduction phenomenon, right? But this did not originate in the 1960s. This started in the late Iron Age. And what they would do, though, is they were performing a ritual. It's called an obstetric ritual. They believed in antiquity that whatever man, whatever image the woman was focused upon while she was being inseminated, she will birth the material of it through her womb as a baby. And so here's what's fascinating, though, and this is getting to my research in the incubi phenomenon. They first appeared to the women in the images of their lovers or their mates.
Right.
That's how it's one of the works of deception here. And so that's what we're happening. So here's what we're looking at, though. We're looking at an apparition that doesn't have a body, but we're looking at an apparition that wants to have a body that looks like its apparition.
Yeah.
Right. So so possession, and this is the limitation of our modern theologians. They can't, for some reason, can't think outside the box. But possession has always been about pregnancy.
Right.
Always. And what's happening in history, even the Nephilim phenomenon and the Long Codex 2, the Apocrypha of John, is that these women were pregnant with both the consciousness of that ghost and the fetus that it's about to possess. This is why in the 16th century, in the debug phenomenon, we had women that were being inseminated, and then they were being possessed by a deceased individual as well. So much so that they were possessed, they would go to the Kabbalistic exorcist. And the Kabbalistic exorcist would perform what's called the levush. Yeah. They would pinch the pulse of the woman. They would have two pulses in the same body. She's pregnant. Two heartbeats in the same body. She's pregnant. Yeah. And so upon the exorcism, what would occur is once that spirit left her, so did the fetus it was possessing. And so that's what we would call the modern, it's the modern missing fetus syndrome, but it's been occurring throughout millennium.
Right. Cool. I'm trying to remember. So I just trying to remember all this.
It's deep, man.
Yeah, just a little bit. So sorry, I'm just trying to look for questions that are relevant. So we did the religious. Rick, so are these encounters on the increase, or are they apocalyptic?
I think it's both. I mean, certainly the way that they're grooming certain experiencers is apocalyptic. I mean, we can go into case study after case study after case study, but these beings are architects of deception. This is what I was talking to Barry Fitzgerald about the other day. Is that they'll be a demon to you if you want them to. They'll be an alien to you if you want them to be an alien. So what they've done is they've created fixed forms of imitation. They'll appear as an alien until you believe they're an alien, and then that's the only way they'll appear to you for the rest of your life. Right. Same thing as a demon. And so what we're really dealing with again is that are they really who they're saying they are, or have they constructed entire belief systems to hide behind? They'll build themselves up as an authority figure and then propagate your belief system just as long as you don't really see what's going on behind the veil.
Yeah.
And I can go on and on with that, but I want to keep my answer short.
No, that's fine. So nickname, sorry, wait for you to drink that.
Very good.
Nickname says, what is the connection between the entities and abduction?
Well, see, these entities were disembodied at first. Yeah. That's why many times they'll have a body, but they'll also have their apparitional quality, just like you and I do.
Yeah.
So the question has always been in the abduction literature, how is it that they can walk through a wall?
Yeah.
Well, right. How is it that they can have a body that looks like the apparition I just saw, right? Because there are two of them. There's the body. Remember what I told you? They wanted a body that looks like their apparition.
Yeah.
So they have two of them. And so So first of all, the idea of abduction, I think that we need to start giving it a different term. They're kidnappings.
Yeah.
It's literally when I steal you, I take you from your home, your family, even your own reality sometimes. And I think one of the biggest aspects of the interconnectivities between this phenomenon and these entities is found in the book of Ezekiel chapter 13, when Yahweh calls them soul hunters.
Right.
Yes. He says, I have aught against you, those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. There's a book that I'm recommending to everybody because I think it's worthwhile. It's called Disembodied Souls. It's by Richard Steiner. It's
Right.
a compendium on out-of-body experiences in the Old Testament and in biblical antiquity. In this, he paints these beings in Ezekiel 13 as entities that, just like these beings, who have the ability to peel your soul out of your body. These are the soul hunters. Now, we see this literature in the modern abduction phenomenon through the lens of out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences.
Right.
Can I go deeper? Can I go deeper with this real quick?
Deep as you can.
All right. So in the Collins Elite research, which everybody says they're religious fundamentalists, it's because they don't read a lot of Collins Elite research. That's fine. I'll just whatever. Moving forward, the Collins Elite researchers reached out to a lady named Judy Doherty. She was a young woman who said that she was driving one day on a dirt road. She looks up and she sees a UFO hovering over her. She gets out of her car to get a better look, and instantaneously, she's now in the UFO looking back down at her body.
Oh.
So it's bilocation. So she's in two places at once. Yahweh called them soul hunters.
Right.
Those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. And so what soul are they triggering? What soul are they pulling out of people? Well, according to history, it's the Ba'ath soul in Egyptology.
Right.
And it was always typified as a bird because it was to leave the body at the moment of death, and it flew away like a bird.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the many interconnectivities between ancient writings in what these beings are and truly what their capabilities are.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very unique situation we're in.
Yeah. Definitely. Going back to the shadow that was on top of you that time, or the apparition.
Yes.
The shadow. No, you beat me to it.
You know, I didn't know how far I get into that. Yes, she was straddling me. She had mounted me in the dream. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, it was weird. Because I know my research and I know my position in the field. I'm thinking, like, this is not just a normal attack. You know, this is a succubus entity.
Yeah.
And this speaks to the dream states that we're often placed into, not just in the succubi case or incubi case, but even in abduction accounts, right? And see, in antiquity, we had called these beings dream demons because what they were doing is they weren't just inducing us into a dream state, but they were looking into our eyes and hacking what I call the frontal orbital media cortex. It's right behind the eyes. And this is the part of our brain that tells us whether or not what we're experiencing is real.
Right.
So they're hacking our belief systems. This is incredible. They're very intelligent creatures. And so what we're thinking is happening isn't really happening. And so somewhere in that gloomy abyss of confusion, they're doing something to us. And but yes, that was in a dream state. And when I woke up, it was actually on top of me. It wasn't just something with a dream. It transcended both dimensions of reality.
Cool. Thank you. Right. Jumping topic a little bit now. This is from Umbra Man. Does Nathaniel consider Judeo-Christian God to be the creator of the world and benevolent, or the Gnostic creator Demiurge,
the
creator of the physical world, was actually evil, i.e. the jealous God?
Well, I think that, again, we have to look at the origins of these mythologies. It's just like people that tell me, okay, well, the flood happened in Genesis. I understand that. We also have the Babylonian flood myth too.
Yeah.
Right. We all, it's like the Atreus epic. The ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a god. Well, where does that come from? Right. Where all these originate. And so I think that these are the same beings, but I think that they have been interpreted and reinterpreted throughout millennia. There's a saying in academia, today's gods are tomorrow's demons. And so what that does is it highlights, this is going to be an academic word, but it highlights the mythopoeic nature of myths, legends, and how they change throughout history. To where the one God that was a savior is now the malevolent God that wants to kill everybody.
Right.
So I'll say this, I believe they have the same origin, but that doesn't mean they're the same gods. So I believe in the origin. I don't believe that they're necessarily interpreted as the same beings. Right. I hope that made sense. I hope it did.
Yeah, thank you. Next question then from Space Cadet Lottie. She wants to know, have you any natural psychic abilities? Sorry.
I come from a different tradition. I will tell you this. Once I started doing field work, I was starting to have out-of-body experiences.
Yeah.
So one of my biggest cases was a murder case. And I was out to dinner when I got the email from the family, and they thought that they were reaching out to my dad, who's a pastor. They're like, "Hey, listen, we need you to come pray for us."
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, okay, I'll have my dad do that for you. What would you like for us to pray for you?" And they said, "Well, we're having paranormal activity in our house." And I'm thinking, my dad's not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's my job, right? That's more along the lines, I'll do it,
Yeah.
Not that my dad wouldn't, but that's kind of my thing. And so as I'm talking to this woman, I'm in two places at once. This has happened before, where I'm walking upstairs to a second level of a house.
Yeah.
And I'm being drawn to a closet. And as I'm typing, I'm saying, "Hey, listen, I don't know where this house is. I don't know the address yet, but I'm in a room right now, and there's an entity in the closet." She freaks out. I was at that closet last night, and I told my buddy the same thing. There's something up there. So I think that it's a combination of two things. Number one, I think that whatever I experienced in my youth, it awakened certain giftings or callings or psychic abilities even, and now I've been able to use them in dealing with some of these beings. So I do have those, where I work with a lot of families that they have young people that have trying to commit suicide or thought about it. It's really interesting stuff. But yes, yeah. I do. I mean, I'm not Cleo. Like, I'm not Miss Cleo. I'm not going to go out there and charge you $100 for reading. I use this stuff more for my body of work.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Right, next question. I hate it when they use big words. I struggle. Umbraman, what is Nathaniel's views on demons such as Payman, who teaches science and arts, etc., and doesn't seem evil at all, versus Archangel Michael, who has seemingly murdered millions at God's command?
Well, this is a good question, man. I'm telling you what, I do some shows and I get battered with questions that are just like, like, what's the scariest thing you ever experienced?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I mean, it's a good question, but there are levels to it. I love these questions. I'm impressed. I really am. I will say this: when we read the King James Version, we read different texts. We have to ask ourselves what science they were teaching.
Yeah.
Here's why. Because when we get into Edward Kelly and John Dee, they were looking for information too. And they were, by all measures, ahead of their entire generation. They were opiates. They were luminaries. But what always seems to occur is that inevitably people want to feel transcendence. They want to feel that next dimension of reality, and they want to bring those secrets into this world. And what we have witnessed, though, is that these beings aren't playing by our rules.
Right.
And so with John Dee and Edward Kelly, everything was going great until that entity said, "I just want you to swap wives."
Yeah.
and I'll give you information. And then they did. And then when they came back to that entity, it was no longer a beautiful handmaiden. It was something completely different who was making fun of them because they thought, okay, you guys are, you know what I mean? It was kind of funny. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying here, even right now, Diana Walsh Pasuka is telling people in her lectures that there is a group. It used to be the Invisible College, but Travis Taylor's out now, so he's no longer invisible. But he is using esotericism to gain access to secret technologies. And so he's even taken Diana Walsh Pasuka out to New Mexico to what's called the gifting field, where he will perform rituals and they'll give him technologies. This is dealing with the daemon, right? Oh, he's just giving us science. Okay, let's go down this road, right? It's the same thing with Jack Parsons, who was performing in the Babylon working, the Amun-Ra trials. He was trying to connect to these other beings, and they were giving him insights into scientific methods.
Right.
But here's what occurs. It's always this. It's never been any different. At the end of the day, when they turn that source off, when they refuse to let you use them, when they stop you from seeing into them, they're going to turn their attention to you directly. And they're going to come knocking on your door and they're going to want something from you. Yeah. In this case with Jack Parsons, according to Collins Elite, he wrote in his diary that he believed that when he gets to a certain point of death, they will harvest his soul.
Yeah.
In exchange for the revelations that they gave them. So again, sure, we can get science and think, okay, it's all copacetic and we're good. But at the end of the day, they're not playing by rules.
No.
They're playing an entirely different game. And yes, so that's my answer to that question, because I think it was kind of couched in this guy's great and God's bad, right? Something like that. I hope I understood that. It's a great question.
No, thank you. In relation to what you were just saying about different stories, different Bibles, does Nathaniel have a version of the Bible, such as the King James, that he feels is more accurate?
Yes. Here. This is what I read: Aramaic, English, New Testament, AENT. Okay.
All right.
It's a translation from my friend Andrew Gabriel Roth. This is not his teaching. It's literally, he's a scholar. He just translates it. You know what I mean? Right. He's got good commentaries in here. He's got your Hebrew language and all that stuff. That's what I use for my, I use other translations, but this is the king for me. And in terms of the Old Testament, I read the Tanakh, and I try to read any commentaries and lexicons I can get my hands on. That's, to answer that question, that's what I go to.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
These are good questions, man. And they're taking up time too. Like we're getting us some stuff.
Just hope they keep coming, because I'm running out as well. Right, next one again is from Space Cadet. She wants to know, do you practice any magic?
Well, we've got to define our terms here. I think that's the biggest issue in the field, is that we're searching for new vocabulary. Yeah. Am I practicing dark magic? No. I'm not a practitioner of any of the arts. But there are people that would say me having an out-of-body experience is magic. You know what I mean? But I don't actively practice magic. You know, I have people that I'm friends with that they dabble in the arts, but it's not to the dimension of Parsons or Crowley. You know, they'll go out there, they'll mix herbs and stuff, they'll light a couple candles. That's not really what I would consider to be magic. Yeah. High magic is, you know, you're talking about a Brahma the Mage, Eliphas Levi, Crowley, Parsons. I don't do any of that stuff. And I honestly, I think that the phenomenon itself finds that to be the easiest to manipulate. Yeah. And so I encounter enough darkness in my own work and the literature I'm reading. Yeah. I don't want them to see me. Barry Fitzgerald told me something the other day, and I'm not name dropping, by the way, even though he is one of my favorite researchers. He said something that's very interesting. He said, don't shine so bright as they can see you. Right. So that's why I'm already visible. I don't want to be any more visible to them.
No, that's fine. You said about name dropping. He's actually on next week.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's
It's
our
awesome,
next
dude.
guest, so yeah,
It's good
looking
stuff.
forward to that one. Yeah, Space Cat just meant. What she meant was, do you practice any rituals?
Right. I don't. Yeah, I don't. I'm not really led to that. You know, like I said, I have friends that do. Kudos to them.
Yeah.
But it's never, even what they do has never been to the height or depth of some of the darker arts that we've seen in the field.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, jumping topic again quickly, but I'm sure it'll come back to the demonology side. Nickname wants to know, have you ever seen a UFO?
I think I have.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen a couple things, actually. It's really interesting. So I live in Ohio. I live in Dayton, Ohio. And a few years ago, my whole neighborhood was outside of their cars, outside their homes, looking into the sky.
Yeah.
And there were these massive white orbs that were just appearing out of nowhere. Just crazy stuff, dude. One would disappear, and then finally they all appeared.
Yeah.
And we're all freaking out, man. I'm all over the message boards on Facebook. Everybody's messaging, what the heck is this? Well, of course, I don't really trust the government. I mean, that's like the yeah, obviously. And they came out and said, well, those were balloons or something. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. So that could have been a UFO.
Yeah.
Another one was when I was a little bit younger. Before I had a reference for what a UFO was, I saw some metallic object that had 3 bulbs on the bottom.
Right.
Yeah. And it looked like the bottom looked like a group of balloons, like metallic shaped or balloon shaped metal objects on the bottom. And it was just ascending up into the sky. And I just thought as a kid, like, okay, it looks like balloons, but it looks like it's metal too.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until later on, when I got older, I started looking at pictures of UFOs and I saw one that looked just like it. Had the 3 bulbs on the bottom.
Yeah.
It was a disc, and it was, that's what I saw. So those are my 2 biggest ufological encounters. Would I like to see more? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I want to see it.
I think we all would.
I know.
I keep looking up, but I've not seen anything for ages. So
yeah,
it's how it is, though, isn't it? You don't always get what you want.
No, it's weird, man. And even if you do see it, like Dr. Connor Turner had a case study where you had 5 people in the car, 3 people saw it, the other 2 didn't. And what the 3 people saw, they never agreed with each other.
Yeah.
Like, that's weird. That's weird.
Yeah, see, I don't understand that. Don't get how they can see different things and all be looking at the same thing.
Yep. But that's my encounter. I'm hoping for more.
Yeah. That brings me to one of the next questions is from Ancient Ruby. Have you ever met an ET that you know of?
Well, about 2 years ago, I reached a point in my research where I said, I want to experience this.
Right.
I've experienced hauntology. I've studied hauntology and apparitional theory.
Yeah.
I want to experience this. And so I don't know what happened. I go into a dream at nighttime. And in this dream, I'm hiding in a basement. And these people were freaking out, like they're terrified. And these beings were like taking people and then translating them like to where a whole other dimension. So I get there along with them, and I'm in this room, and there is a young girl, maybe about 25 years old. She's wearing a one-piece suit, and we're all in a line. There are other people that are sitting down, and they're trying to look at symbols and interpret them. They're working with different things.
Yeah.
There is a window up top on my right. I'm sorry, my left.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around and I'm realizing some of these people that I see with me were some of the people I saw in the basement, and they were in terror. I mean, they were losing their minds.
Right.
Because they're asking the same questions I was. Where am I at? What is this? I thought I was in my room. I thought I was in a basement.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around, I look over to this girl. I said, I think I said something about the pandemic.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, I understand. She said, my mother experienced something as well, just like what you are. I said, really? She goes, yes. Then she looks at me and says, but don't fraternize with me. Turn around, pay attention to what you're doing. So when she said that, it was like just real sterile, real professional, like. And so then an old man walked up to her, looked at me, pointed at me and said, how's he doing? She said, he's doing okay. He just needs to focus more. So then they took me to a wall.
Yeah.
Made me stare at a wall. And they said, we want you to focus more. Because if you don't focus more, you'll never be able to do what you're supposed to do. And then I woke up.
Wow.
So I don't know. Was it an abduction? I don't know. It was weird to me because the night before I had asked, I want to experience something in this environment. So I don't know. But I hope that's a good answer for you guys. I don't want to take a picture everywhere and be like, hey, I don't know. But I leave that to everybody else to hypothesize.
Did you not have anything like after effects from that?
No. Now in my cases, I do. Like if I'm using my gifts for something, for like the next 2 or 3 hours, I have to shut off. Like I have to go somewhere alone and just calm down. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like a level of trauma that's triggered when you're dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's a loaded question. I don't know if that was an ET. I don't know if that was in an interdimensional experience.
Yeah.
Or if it was just a dream. So I don't really know.
No. Well, do you want to find out? Would you like to find out?
No. No.
Fair enough.
I'll tell you why. I don't. Okay. These creatures have manifested as extraterrestrials. Yeah. And I'm talking literally an abduction. In one abduction account, you'll have an apparition of a dead person. You'll have an alien gray. And then that same alien gray will turn aside. And then the experiencer will see that was just a mask.
Right.
The frequency fuzzes in and out. And that was just what the being wanted us to see of it.
Yeah.
So what am I saying? What I'm saying is, yes, these beings can be all of the above. They can be extraterrestrial. Some of them can be deceased, and some of them can be demons. But from my perspective, the single origin hypothesis, they've played these roles to us throughout millennia.
Right.
Right. So what I want to experience them, I don't know. I mean, I told myself at one time I would, but once you start getting into the data and the case studies, no. I mean, like Dr. Carla Turner had a case study of Ted Rice.
Yeah.
He's abducted along with his grandmother, and the entity became an incubus to her. He tried to mate with this grandmother, and the grandmother said, I've only been with one man. It's my husband. He's been deceased now for 11 years. Now, this is what we have to pay attention to. Instantly, that woman's given that entity a role to play.
Right.
This is incredible. So now it hacks her belief system, pulls out a memory of her husband out of her mind, and steps into the image. And so now from the shadows is an apparition of her husband.
Ah.
And then comes the question, well, you won't mate with anybody else. Will you mate with him?
Yeah.
So that's what we're dealing with. So we're dealing with masters of deception here. And so I wouldn't trust myself around them. If they wanted to manipulate me and my perceptions, it'd be difficult for me not to just go with it.
No. Great answer. Thank you.
Yep.
Right. Do one more question before the break.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
I'll do this one. This is from Rick Allen again. Does Nathaniel believe that there is no life elsewhere in the universe?
Well, in that aspect of it, I don't know that there isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say I believe or I don't believe. I don't know. We don't have enough data to know otherwise. I would say that there was an old pastor of my dad's who said it's an awful lot of wasted space.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, these beings, though, they tell us they're ET, but they've also told us they're deceased loved ones. They've told us they're demons.
Yeah.
Right? To children, they've told them they're Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
What's going on here? It's deeper than what we think.
Yeah, obviously, like you said before, they're telling us what we kind of want them to want. They're telling us the answer that we want, I think, aren't they?
Right, right.
To a degree. So it's like, behind that, then, what's the truth? What are they really? Where are they from? Or what are they from? So I think that's what we're all trying to find out. And we ain't getting anywhere, really, are we?
Well, you know, we have behavioral patterns. We have bloody footprints in the snow. That's really, we know what they've been doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they've been hoodwinking us for millennia, but they're still doing what they've always been doing. The mask may be different, but it's the same phenomenon.
Yeah. No, thank you. Right, so a quick break. Well, we'll take the 4-minute break, and then we'll carry on. We've still got about 10 questions to go. And then
That's awesome. Let's do that.
Yeah. And then hopefully we'll get a chance and you can explain. I can't remember what the question was. I'll have to find it.
It's okay.
It's in here somewhere. I'll find it. Right. See you in a few minutes.
All right.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, and we're back.
Yes,
Right. I think I found the question. I'll just run it by you before we carry on. Was about your views on the demons such as Payman, who teaches science and arts, etc., and about Archangel Michael, who murdered millions at God's command. Was that the question?
Well, I think we already answered that in the last segment.
Oh, did we? Right.
I think so. Yeah. That was that. Well, it's still a worthy question to answer even more. These things again, if they're giving us something that would lead us into communication, that's always been a burden. Yeah, because they don't play by our own rules.
No.
And this is what I've told people this hundreds of times in my lectures. They are playing by different rules because they're playing a different game.
Yeah.
And we're trying to see what their value system is. What are their belief systems? What are they really after? Because so much of this is all about us. I mean, my God, all they have to do is put a mirror on us. Hey, they confirm what I believe. They must be good beings.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's really where we're at with the data.
Yeah. No. Cheers. Right. Mm-hmm. So we've got quite a lot of questions now.
Okay.
I'll just do them in order that I've got them. It'll be easier.
That's fine.
I end up confusing myself even more. So next one is from Rick. Are there belief systems that are propagated by demons?
Well, I think that we all have experienced what's called the temptation of belief.
Yeah.
Like I did I did a show months ago, and I was talking about how these beings, especially with women, even men sometimes, mostly women, they will manifest in the image of a former lover, like a present husband or even a present lover. But it's usually when the husband or the lover is asleep or if they're out of the room.
Yeah.
But they'll manifest to the woman and then tempt them with believing. In my book, The Skin That Crawls, I talk about this, what I call a temptation of belief, where it's not enough for me to manifest to you as this person. When I do that, I'm leaning on you and asking you, do you really believe I am appearing as this person? Number one, do you believe I am who I am appearing as?
Yeah.
And at that moment, there is a tacit agreement. Before any of the physical stuff takes place, that woman has to believe, this is my husband.
Yeah.
Right? And so there is this a conditioning mechanism occurring where they will step into roles that we give them.
Yeah.
And so what generally occurs is, yes, you are my boyfriend. Yes, you are my husband. And then, okay, then I'm going to step into that role. And now I'm going to do things that the husband's done, right? I had a case in India. There was a young lady, she called me about, reached out to me about an incubus. And she said that the entity had manifested in the image of every man she's been with. Right. But it knew which man was using birth control, if I can say that. Right?
Yeah.
It knew it. And so it manifested to her first as those she did not make wear birth control.
Right.
Because what they're doing is they're increasing the probability of insemination.
Right.
Wow. So that's how deceitful they are. And then so they kept going and evolving and mutating. I'll put a different mask on. Is this good enough? No. Put a different mask on. Is this good enough? No. And so what they're looking for, again, is to be believed in and for us to give them a role that they can step into. Now I will become that person to you. Now, does it mean they're that person? The image is not the entity most of the times. And so what occurs, though, is there's a moment, just like in the Apocryphon of John, it says they manifested in the image of the husbands. And then at the moment of insemination, remember what I told you? They're going to create a literal fetus that looks like the apparition.
Yeah.
At the very moment of insemination, they switch their appearance, they pulled off the mask, and
Yeah.
then now what you're looking at is the real entity itself.
Right.
So what we're dealing with is an incredibly advanced species of deception. And if anything in my work has proven the data, I think that's it.
Yeah.
We don't really know what we're dealing with in the fullness of it all.
Right. So do you think that then, obviously, we're being used just to reproduce the top bottom of it all?
Yes, yes, yes. They have to have wombs. They have to be born, reborn
Yeah.
among men. And so the mortal portal of wombs and words, it's a real thing. It exists. It's not a figment of our imagination. And what seems to be occurring is a self-replication program. They're replicating their species through us. This gets back into something that's very deep. This gets back into the Lil spirits in Phoenician manuscripts.
Yeah.
Prior to Hebrew mythologies creating the Lilith entity, the Phoenician texts mention a Lil spirit. It was a species of disincarnate, disembodied consciousness.
Yeah.
So the idea was that when a person dies, their Lil consciousness leaves. And being disembodied, it will seek to create another body to possess for itself. And so in Hebrew mythology, Hebrew mythologists, this is fascinating, they created Lilith or Lilith.
Yeah.
And Lilith was what? What's her origin? The Lil spirit, disembodied consciousness. But what was she doing? Well, she was going to men as a succubus and harvesting their excretions, and then going to a woman and inseminating them.
Right.
To create a body to inhabit. So this is all the same phenomenon. The missing fetus syndrome is not new. It's due to ufology because they're so nuts and bolts that they don't realize, hey, there's a consciousness connection here that goes all the way back to the late Iron Age and into prehistory. But by all implications, what we're witnessing here, though, is a self-replication program that they're using us for.
Yeah.
And it's not okay. It's a direct threat to us as a species.
Right. Yep. Cheers. Right. Next question then, from Ancient Ruby. He wants to know, what does Nathaniel use to remove his demons?
Okay, so I was out to dinner. For some reason, people like meet me out to dinner. It's weird, like conversations, whatever.
Yeah.
Buddy of mine brought a lady over, a young lady, and he said, "Look, Nate," he's like, these are my friends, and they're asking me questions about something going on in their lives, and I think that you're kind of the guy that maybe help them." I said, "Okay, fine." And she sits down with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's a PK. He's the son of a pastor.
Right. Okay.
We call them preacher's kids.
Yeah.
I look at her. I said, "Okay, what can I do for you? You know, what's going on?" She says, "Well," she goes, "my best friend." She said, "My best friend lives in an old house in Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
And she lives there with her grandfather. And she said her grandfather was recently chased out of the house into the front lawn by an invisible entity. And she said that he was screaming and yelling and come get it off me and everything. And he actually died. He had a massive heart attack and died. And she's like, so, my best friend, obviously, she's scared to go back into that house. I'm like, well, I understand that. I got that.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is her friend is about the same age she is. And so let's listen to the story. Her grandfather died, and her friend needs help. I said, all right. As I'm talking to her, I see this dark cloud just descend down on her, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can, we can get in contact with your friend and I can go to the house. We can, do whatever you want us to do.
Yeah.
I said, but I think that you have an attachment of suicide on you. And I'm telling you, everything changed.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend looks at her, looks at me. Her boyfriend's like freaking out. And I said, I just watched it land on you. And I said, it's familial. Now,
Right.
again, she first came up there because her friend and her grandfather. And when I said that, she started shaking, like the atmosphere got real thick and heavy. She held her hand out, put my finger on her wrist, and I felt the scars of where she had slipped her wrists. That's when I realized, uh-oh, it's on. Like now it's me and the entity. It's not me and the girl. It's me and that entity. So what I employed was a Kabbalistic rite that Isaac Luria created, sometimes it's mentioned in the New Testament where you talk to the spirit and not to the person.
Yeah.
And now it's really interesting. Catholics do this too in their own way. But what I was trying to do is I was trying to give this young girl her ability to her license of freedom back. See, what these beings will do is they start out by sending you thoughts and seeing if you agree with them.
Yeah.
And if you agree with them, a lot of times we'll take that worst thought ever and somewhere within the corridors and archives of our trauma, we'll apply it to something somebody else said, and we'll agree with it intellectually. I agree with it. That's what this entity had done. You're nothing. That's a thought. Now, do you agree with that? Oh, I agree with that. Okay. Now, slowly what it does, this is called possession. What it does is it gets the victim to the point where now it's thinking thoughts for them and they can't decipher between the two.
Right. So they give
Was
it.
that my right? I got chills, man.
A submission form.
Right. It is. It's bending the will. It's called manufactured consent.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of it, now it's going to want you to act on the thoughts.
Yeah.
And now it's built your will to now I'm going to act. And that's what she did. She tried to slit her wrist. She did. But so I said, you realize that this entity is laying on you, and that a lot of the depression, the suicidal ideation, the feeling, low self-esteem, like you're not good enough, you should just leave because nobody, you're a burden. I said, those thoughts are not your own. Those thoughts are coming from that entity.
Yeah.
And so I started going through repetition. Okay, I want you to say this. I want you to give a verbal command. I do not submit to this anymore. And I said, so what you do is you get that entity lifted. So now it's separate. Now you can deal with the person.
Yeah.
Now that entity no longer has a hold. So I'm doing that. And I said, I see it's familial. And when I'm doing this, okay, I swear to you, this girl is openly weeping. She's in her boyfriend's arm, and her boyfriend's looking at me going, what is going on? And you could see that spirit break. Boom, gone. Heaven is lifted. And I said, this is a familial spirit. It's been following your bloodline. Remember what I said. She first got there because of her friend and then the grandpa.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell everybody how they operate real quick. She said, well, my grandfather killed himself in 2014.
Yeah. And
she said, since then, that is when that spirit began to work on me. So it is going down the bloodline, looking for people, to inhabit and to haunt. And so what was so fascinating to me is after we got done with it, it changed her life. She did the testimonial on my Instagram page about it. And it was, for me, it was a teaching thing for me too, right? But it was life-changing for her.
Yeah.
But what I think happened was her story was true about her friend needing help. But I think what happened was she was being drawn to me.
Yeah.
For that reason, for herself. And that entity, right, didn't want that to come out in the conversation.
Right. So they had to change how it was worded.
Yep. That's just one way that we can deal with them.
Yeah. Oh. It's mad. It's mind-blowing. It really is.
They're really good. They're really good at what they do.
Yeah.
They're really good at hiding.
Yeah.
I was out to dinner with my family about 6 months ago at BJ's Brew House, and I'm sitting down. I look over the corner. My mom goes, "This girl keeps staring at you, looking at you. She's trying to get your attention." And I look over, and it was her. It was her. Like, it's a really cool conversation, but
yeah. So is she all good now?
she's all good, dude. Yeah, and what had happened was, see, people don't realize this. If you go into the 16th century, or even get on Google and look up the D book, or not the Dybbuk, the D book.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about a wine box. The pictograph or the pictorial tradition of a Dybbuk, D book.
Yeah.
Was a man walking with a cane and a literal skeleton hanging on top of him, laying on top of him. Right. We would call those attachments.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we were dealing with. And that's why the Dybbuk concept was tied to Chaim Vital and Isaac Luria. Right. And that was the way that they dealt with some of these entities.
Right. Ooh. You okay?
Deep stuff. Yes, sir. I'm good. I try to mute that.
Yeah, we didn't hear it. You're all good.
Oh man, I'm sorry, guys. I'm still getting over COVID. So, yeah, that's one way to deal with it. But again, the idea here, though, is are these horns and hooves, or are these just disincarnate spirits? That's what we're wrestling with in many cases.
Yeah. No, just quickly on what you've just been talking about spirits. Mm-hmm. Ancient rubies. What if a spirit comes at you what you do? I don't get.
Yeah, what do you do for you?
Yeah.
Well, I've never had one come at me. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, outside, like I said, outside of me being a kid, a lot of this stuff I just turn off, and I just kind of separate myself from my work.
Yeah.
I would probably pray, quote scriptures, or just literally just say, I'm not doing this. You got to leave. But that's me now. I don't know what I would do. It would depend on what I feel.
Yeah.
Depend on what it is
at the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cheers. Okay, right. Jumping to another topic. Nickname. What do you think the Vatican know and hold back?
So, I think that they know many of what they're calling demons or ghosts.
Yeah.
I think that they know that the exorcistic rite was about cleansing someone from corpse pollution and consciousness that originated from the corpse.
Yeah.
And but again, they control what information flows out to the public. I think that they don't know a whole lot about what these aliens are, outside of their perception of them being demons. I don't know. I can't really tell you. Here's why: because the Library of Alexandria burnt down.
Yeah.
And a lot of we don't know what they have that came from the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions there. I don't know what they don't know, and that's a hard question. I wish I did.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. Right. Next one is from Lottie. What is Nathaniel's opinion on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth?
I like them. I like them a lot. I like the list of sevens, the seven kings and whatnot. I think there's a lot of validity to that. Like the number 7 is prolific throughout ancient literature.
Right.
And I'm big into Atlantis and Atlantean literature, so I like it. I think a lot of it. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Cheers. Are there rituals, so from Rick, are there rituals that you use?
No, I don't do rituals. I don't do rituals at all, man. I mean, like the last cleansing I did, I just prayed. I guess some people would consider that a ritual, but it's not like I would do the same thing every time I go and do a cleansing.
Yeah. So so when you get to wherever it is that you're going to, you just do what you feel is right at the time for that particular thing.
Yeah. Case in point, man. This house that I went to, with the family and everything, when I had like the out of body experience and all that stuff, I had, when I got there, first thing I told them is I don't want to know anything. I don't want to be told anything. All I knew is just by cold reading was just they had paranormal activity. And this is sometimes I employ this when I feel like it, but I turned on my recorder. I pulled one of the family members aside. I said, I want you to go through the house with me as a witness to what I'm telling you. And then at the very end of it, we're gonna sit in the living room, and I'm gonna tell you what I found, and then you're gonna give context to it. You know, this is what you saw and everything. So here's some at least a historical reference to the case study. There was a husband and a wife that had a 13-year-old daughter.
Yep.
The 13-year-old daughter was becoming close friends with a 15-year-old girl at school. And they were both completely opposite individuals. One was short, one was tall. One's 15, one's 13. One's very shy and backward. The other one's very boisterous, very open and confident. And so in this case, the opposites really did attract. So they became close friends. Well, the father sits the 13-year-old down and says, listen, I've noticed you've been, kind of keeping to yourself. You don't come out for dinner. All you do is stay in your room. We're thinking, and we have evidence that this is because of the 15-year-old. I think that she's a bad influence on you. We get the heebie-jeebies when we're around her. There's just something off.
Yeah.
And he said, so, everything went fine for a couple months. And then one night they're watching TV. It's like midnight, he said. They look out the window, and there's that 15-year-old girl staring at them.
Yeah.
From the window. And he said, that's when I realized this is not a normal individual. There's something really, really wrong here.
Yeah.
And I'm not sharing names, so that's a good thing. Obviously I'm not going to do that. But so he said, and then about 2 months later, he said, it's on a school night. And he said, me and my wife stay up a lot of times and watch movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, my daughter walks down the stairs. I think she's just getting a glass of water. She walks up to the front door, unlocks it, opens the door. And she said, and then in walks the 15-year-old, bandana on.
Yeah.
He said, bandana on. And she has a stub-nosed pair of scissors in one hand and a knife in the other. And she just stabbing everybody. And as she's stabbing, there is a disembodied male voice coming out of her. Like just really laughing and talking to them and stuff. The mother ended up dying, and then he was stabbed. He had to go to get surgery and stuff. They sewed him up. So that all happened when I got there. Andy, I saw them where they had to cut up the carpet. That's how, like, they didn't even have time to fix it. I was there pretty much.
Yeah.
So when I got there, I'm going through the room. I go upstairs to that closet I saw, and in the closet there is a milk carton full of green model trains.
Right.
And I knew I was going to go to the closet because that's what I saw when I was out of body. And so I'm with the sister of the husband. She came in to help him and stuff get healed up. And I said, whatever this entity is, and whoever it is, it's here. It's attracted to these green model trains. And I said, I don't know if it belonged to this entity in life or if it just reminds him of something.
Yeah.
But there's something to this. And so we look at that. I go into the family, the couple's room, the husband and wife. And I can hear just a faint voice of her trying to get through to me, but I couldn't get a good connection. So I said, all right, we're going to go downstairs in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I'm getting to a point here, guys. Okay. I'm not just rambling. So we go to the kitchen, and I see, not with my eyes, but I see the victim sitting on a wooden chair at a wooden table, smoking a cigarette, listening to music. Now, the only thing that was visible is the table.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm telling this lady all this, and so we get to sit down. I said, all right. I said, number one, I said, I think there's a male entity here. It's very violent. I said, it wants to kill me. And I said, it's really hot in here. Like, it was temperature starting to rise.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, this entity either abused his daughter and his wife or killed women or hated women. But he was a very violent man, and he hated females. Yeah. And so we get to talking. And so the husband looks at me and goes, you know what? He goes, the man it sounds like you're talking about my father-in-law.
Right.
He said, that's, my wife's dad. He's dead now. He said, but he was a gang member, and he would get in a drunken rage, and he would start beating my wife, which is deceased now,
Yeah.
beating her unconscious, and he would beat his own wife. And he always told her, I'm going to kill you one day.
Yeah.
Now, this will mess with everybody's paranormal rules, because this shouldn't happen. All right? So he does that. He says that, and so he goes, his name was Doug. I said, Dougie, and they start laughing. And I said, why do you say Dougie? I said, I don't know. I just, Dougie. It's a nickname. They said, no. Whenever he would get drunk and be real verbose and real demonstrative, we would make fun of him and call him Dougie, and he would get even more worked up.
Yeah.
And he said, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, Nate. He says, because the only thing that they could do to get this man settled down when he was drunk and out of control was they treated him like a child. They put him in a car, take him to Toys R Us, and they get him green model trains.
Right.
He said, matter of fact, when he died,
yep.
He said, and matter of fact, when he died, we put all of his stuff upstairs in the storage room. At that point, his sister's looking around, going, "Oh my God!" Like chills, man.
Shoot, yeah.
And then she said, "Well, what about the bass fishing equipment in the other closet?" He said, "Yeah, that belongs to him too." Then he goes into this. He said, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, Nate. He said, because you know who made that wooden table in the living room or in the kitchen?
Yeah.
He did.
And that was the only visible.
Yep. And he said, and also the chair that you saw is in the garage. We just didn't put it out today.
Right.
So I don't do that all the time. But sometimes I do like to go in there without knowing anything, because at least it gives me some credibility with the family.
Oh, yeah.
Once I did the cleansing, it got so hot in there. The husband's on the couch and he's going, "Oh my God, get it off me. It's hot. It's burning. It's burning.
Yeah.
It's burning." And at the very end of the night, it was like somebody turned the lights on.
Yeah.
Now, can I keep talking? Are we good?
Yeah. Carry on.
Am I getting eaten up in the comments, man?
No,
I hope everybody.
yeah,
okay.
It's good. It's all
All
good.
right. So about 5 months later, I'm sitting in the same restaurant in the same chair I was when I got the initial email. Okay, to help this family. So next to me, and I'm always reading, by the way.
Yeah.
And next to me sits a husband and a wife. About 15 minutes into it, the wife leans over to the husband and says, "Hey, what are you reading?" Well, it's probably on, I don't know, Nephilim or something funny, and I explain it to her, and she goes, "Oh my God, I'm really interested in that." So she switches seats with the husband. So we get into a conversation.
Yeah.
So she goes, "Okay, when was your last case?" And I said, "Well, I just gave her kind of the base notes like I gave you guys."
Yeah.
She goes, "You're Nathaniel Gillis." I said, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, you're Nathaniel Gillis." She goes, "I know who you are." I said, "How?" She goes, "Well," she goes, I don't want to tell you. She says, "But the night you did the cleansing, I got a phone call from the 13-year-old who was in jail."
Yeah.
She's a social worker. She said the 13-year-old did not know I did the cleansing, but that entity went to the jail cell and said, "I no longer have authority over you. I have to leave." And he left. And she said, so I got a phone call from the 13-year-old girl crying, saying, "I don't know what just happened, but that being that's been visiting me every night in jail is no longer there." That happened. It was wild. She was a social worker. So
yeah,
that was one of the biggest cases I've had. But it's sometimes it makes things worth it. All the suffering and all the mental anguish of going through these case studies. Sometimes you get results like that makes it all worth it.
Yeah. So then what happened? What happened with the girls? Can you tell?
I don't know. I haven't kept up with them. I know that they were both in on it. Evidently they had both talked about it.
Yeah.
And what spoke to me the most about this, number one, is that the entity could not open its own door.
Right.
Right. And it could never have manipulated a 13-year-old to do, which was something that was outside of our own personality. I mean, it had to have somebody unlock the door from within, and then so I don't know. There's a lot of implications here with the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're very intelligent, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I suppose it's similar to like when you see in a movie, like with a vampire, they have to be invited in. That's what
Sometimes,
I'm kind of thing
yeah,
that I'm getting from all this.
yeah. Some of them have to be invited in. There was a case out of, it was in Israel, and I think it was in the 17th century. A 25-year-old man was in an apple orchard with his father. He was picking apples, and his father goes, I'm gonna go over here, just keep on doing what you're doing. I'll meet up with you for lunch, like in about a couple hours or so.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, this 25-year-old man or whatever, he gets physically assaulted by this entity.
Right.
And he gets possessed by the entity. And when he went to the exorcist, during the interrogation of the entity said, yes, I was, by all means, a predator in my life. And it was at that tree, in that orchard, that I committed my first act. And that was what, right? That man has no idea. He's just picking an apple. But that entity was visiting his crime scenes, and it picked up. Okay, there's someone there.
Yeah.
So yeah, but they're playing by different rules here, and they're playing a different game. And that's why I say that demonology is an incomplete answer to an already incomplete question.
Yeah.
These are not all horns and hooves. You can't banish all of them with the exorcistic rite. That's a fact. Father Sinistrari of Amino met an entity on a dirt road walking one day, and it didn't respond to anything.
Yeah.
No rituals, no liturgical rites, no scriptures, no nothing. And then he classified the entity as a pagan demon.
Right.
How does that even make sense? So it's so funny. But yeah, so that ought to show us that, hey, they have their own belief systems. They have their own value. They have their own currency.
Yeah.
And I think it's high time as a field we start to understand that and research it more.
Yep. Wicked. Thank you. Right. We've got, can you do 20 questions in half an hour?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. I'll try. Let's do it.
Let's go. Right. Ready? Rick Allen. Done that one. Yeah, that's right. 19 questions in half an hour. Try again. How does Nathaniel? Why are these coming back up? Yeah, YouTube ain't playing ball tonight. I don't know what's going on.
Good.
Right, try again. Third time lucky. Rick Allen, does Nathaniel believe cryptids such as Bigfoot and Dogmen to be demons or Nephilim?
They could be both. I think there is there's some scientific data behind Bigfoot and Dogmen.
Yeah.
Other than that, we have case studies of people witnessing them, especially on Skinwalker Ranch. The phenomenon manifested.
Yeah. Literally,
a dog smoking a cigarette.
Oh, yeah.
That's about as much of a dog man as I could possibly, you possibly get.
Yeah.
Are they apparitional? Are they interdimensional? Can they materialize and dematerialize at will? I had an individual that sent me a very, very blurry video of what he says was a Bigfoot crawling out of a tree, like it lived in the tree and it was looking around.
All right. Yeah.
I've never heard of. I've heard some stuff, but so I don't know what they are. I know that there's a lot of forestry right now in the United States that's been left uncovered and undiscovered, just like our oceans.
Yeah.
If they exist, then they're great at hiding. And if they exist, I would suggest our government knows because they have eyes on everything.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, but to answer the question, I would lean more to a cryptid.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. Another one from Nickname. Has Nathaniel ever been warned off his work?
Warned of, but yes. This has been recently. I had two different experiencers reach out to me.
Yeah.
They had heard me on two different shows. They did not know each other. Well, I'm alleging they didn't. I don't know. But they both said the same thing, that their beings told them that we'll be waiting for you when you die.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, that's real nice. That's when I was kind of like, oh my God, that's when I reached out to Barry Fitzgerald. Like, have you ever had this happen?
Yeah.
I get threats from, now and then, but I kind of weed them out. There's some
Yeah.
threats that are just like, oh my God, so I don't, whatever. But that was kind of chilling. I was like, okay,
Yeah. So have you, sorry, go on.
No, but yeah, I had been warned to stop it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, if anything, that gives me proof of my research that it's making a difference in the field.
Yeah.
And there's the veil is starting to thin, and our eyes are adjusting to the darkness, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah. So have you had any MIB encounters?
I've had some very weird. It wasn't necessarily an MIB encounter, but I was. This is weird. So I was walking out of a Walmart one day.
Yeah.
And this lady that worked there had a Walmart vest.
Yeah.
I did not know her. And I had begun my research of this phenomenon. And she looks at me and she goes, "Hey, why don't you follow me to my car for a second? I want to show you something."
Right.
I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, I want to show you something." And then I felt fear. And when I felt fear, she verbalized it. "Don't be afraid."
So she knew.
She knew. "Don't be afraid. I just want to show you something. Come to my car real quick. It'll only take a second." And I knew she wasn't crazy, man. She just got off of work.
Right.
That's when it was that same day, another encounter with another person at the mall where they just start talking about, "Oh, by the way, have you ever researched this subject out at the mall, at the food court?" I'm like, "That's what I'm researching." I don't so it was almost like these things were like,
mind-reading.
Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily a classic MIB encounter. Obviously not. That'd be like a, I don't know, woman from Walmart encounter. Different. Not an MIB.
WFW.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It could have been something similar.
Something definitely took control of her mind. That's what I'm looking at it as. I mean, you don't just go around asking strangers to come to your car in the parking lot of your job with your vest on. No, it doesn't make any sense.
And then for them to know that you felt it was a bit iffy.
That was triggering. I was like, nope, now I know I'm not going.
I think that would have been the part I determined when you got out of there.
Oh, yeah, dude. I got out quick.
Don't blame you. All right, next question from Space Cadet Lottie. What is Nathaniel's opinion on Anthony Peake's material?
I love Anthony Peake. There's a guy that I know that's trying to get us on a show together so we can just kind of bounce things off each other and dive into the consciousness connection.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Anthony Peake. And, I like, I'm going to say this. I lean more towards the intellectual, academic side of the work. I'm willing to create hypothesis, There's nothing too woo right now. There's nothing too woo because everything's still on the table. So that's one of the reasons I love Anthony Peake. I think he's a solid researcher. And, hopefully we can get on a show together sometime soon in the future.
Cool. Thank you. Next question from Rick-Allen. Does Nathaniel want the answer to more? Oh, what does Nathaniel want the answer to more than anything else?
The afterlife.
Yeah.
I see. My research has led me to believe that these are the disembodied. These are the disincarnate, and these were formerly human, and they mutated. They mutated in their devolvement, and so that's my perception of it. And it goes back to Anthony Peake's work too.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. I want to know what the afterlife consists of. That's always been a topic that's drawn me the most in my research.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Next one from Space Cadet again. What are your thoughts on astral abduction?
We got a problem here. We have a problem, and the field needs to. I was going to say something, but we have a problem. Major problem in the field. I'll tell you why, because I had a remote viewer. I was working with a son.
Yeah.
And his son was, he listened to a lecture I gave about incubi cases and how that these beings were carving symbols underneath people's eyelids.
Oh.
Yep. And there's a lot of evidence that in certain autopsies, one of them was performed along the side of Sinistrago of Amino, who's a Franciscan priest.
Yeah.
So he heard that lecture and he's like, man, I got to talk to him. So we get on the phone together and he says, look, man, he goes, my dad was a renowned remote viewer. And he said, my dad would go out of body. He would meet these creatures or these guides.
Yeah.
And they would give him information. Just like, again, this is the same pattern. I want information about science. Okay. Then you got to do something and they'll give you, there's always some kind of tacit agreement here that they're going to manipulate. And so he would go out of body and he would meet these beings. They were in a room. They would flank him on the right and left.
Yeah.
And then he would meet with them and he would get advice. And what about this guy? Well, here's what we think is going to happen with him. And here's his advice and stuff. Then he'd go down, get back into his body and get paid thousands of dollars. And so he had records, archival work of just prophecies that came true and stuff that he was given. He said, there were times when his dad would come down from a session, walk into the living room, turn the lights off, and tell his son, one of my guides is here standing in the room right now, and he wants to tell you something. And he said it always creeped him out. He said, because as a child, he said, for some reason, I never trusted these guides. He did, but I never liked them. And he said, one night, he said, my dad stumbles down the stairs. He's incoherent. He's sweating profusely. He's pale. And he's holding his chest. He says he has a massive heart attack. When we get into the hospital, we're taking his shirt off to put a robe on him.
Yeah.
And as we're taking his shirt off, we see from underneath the skin religious amulets, symbols that are moving from underneath. They were subdermal. They were moving through to the surface of the skin.
Yeah.
This is tripping. And he said, when we're looking at that, we're looking at each other going, oh my God, this is really freaking weird. Really weird. And so when they got the father on some medications and everything, he actually told them what occurred. He said, I went into one of my readings. I thought I was dealing with my guides.
Yeah.
When I realized that I was not dealing with my guides, or at least I realized that these beings weren't my guides, or they were my guides. Basically, he said that they turned on him and they changed their apparitional appearance into something that was horrific. He said, that's when I slammed back into my body and I'm looking down at my chest and a burning sensation is moving from inside to the outside. Now, this is a behavioral pattern, a common motif that we all need to pay close attention to. When Betty Luca was abducted astrally, pulled her soul out of her body, whatever you want to call it, she was in two places at once. Her husband, Bob, turned around and saw it. She leaves her body to go with them.
Yeah.
She gets back into her body after the abduction, and then scoop marks manifest. Not before. It was only after she was placed back into her body, then a skin condition is manifested. Just like Ian Stevenson's work with the afterlife, with people who had previous lives. Their death wounds of the first body manifested as birthmarks in the second.
Yeah.
So the connection here is there's something in the soulish dimension that when they pull the soul out and they place it back into a body, we're witnessing skin conditions. In biblical antiquity, they called it leprosy.
Yeah.
But it's not the modern Hansen's disease. To them, it was literally a spiritual condition first. and then it manifested on the skin. So with the astral production phenomenon, there is a soul to skin manifestation, and that's what I'm pursuing because I think it's a phenomenal aspect.
Yeah. So maybe a bit of a daft question, but does the skin like ever change color, or do you see any like ripples or anything like that going through it?
Yes, we've had everything from symbols, religious amulets, to scarifications. Like I said, Sinistrari was finding it underneath people's eyelids.
Yeah.
I had one case study of a lady that reached out to me. She said that her daughter, see, we got to start thinking about this. Hauntology and ufology are the same phenomenon.
Yeah.
Same phenomenon. She was in a haunted house. This entity was targeting her daughter. Her symptoms and symptomology, they're the same thing that this remote viewer experienced. A certain burning sensation on the area that's affected, and then subdermally, through the skin underneath it, emerges scratches.
Right.
So it's not right. So are they attacking our soul first?
Well, if from what you're saying, they're coming from the inside out.
They're coming from the inside out.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm going to go further with this. The amulets that were carved into this man's chest were interreligious and cross-cultural. They weren't strictly Judaism, and they weren't Catholicism.
Right.
They even had an arch on it that was Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
Now, Abramelin the Mage talks about this in his work, and he talks about how this is considered to be angel magic.
Right.
Whoa. I think that's fascinating.
It is. Yeah, some space gets just, but it's terrifying. But just with what you've just said, because you always think that these scratches that people get from, like, whether it's abductions or poltergeist activity, that it's coming from it's an outside force that's doing it.
What we've heard, yeah.
But with the way you've just explained it, it is a lot more scary if it is.
Oh, it's terrifying.
That it's coming from the inside.
It's terrifying.
Just knowing that there's something. Just knowing that there's something inside, not even doing the cuts or the runes and all that kind of stuff. Just to know that there's something inside that is. What's the word?
Manifesting.
Yeah. No, it's not the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That has the ability to do that, to go inside and do these marks on the skin.
Right. It's different. It's a different concept. And again, there are people in the field that are complicit with bolstering dogmatism.
Yeah.
And by doing that, these beings are allowed to continue operating in the ignorance of the field. Right? Because if they can convince us they're doing this, and we'll never understand what they're really doing. And so again, if they're affecting us on an existential level, right? If they are peeling the soul out of the body and then manifesting through the skin what was done to the soul, then we have a whole plethora of problems here that have to be addressed. Because if there's ever been a threat, I tell people this, there's ever been a threat to the human species, it's the entity that can pull you out of yourself.
Yeah.
I had, I want to ramble. I know I'm getting on my little soapbox here.
No, it's good. Honestly, just carry on. It's fine.
I had a researcher that reached out to me. He's from New England. And he's like, Manny, because he's done shows, done Paracon and stuff. He's very good at his job. I love him to death. He's a good friend of mine now. We're really close.
Yeah.
He said, have I ever told you how I got into the field? I said, no. We've talked about other things, but it just never come up. He said, I was really sick one time as a kid, and this creature kept coming into my room at night, and I kept seeing him.
Yeah.
He said, next thing I know, I get sick, and I go into this dream state, and now I'm hovering over my body, and I'm looking down at my body. He said, all of a sudden, that entity took control of my body, looked right up at me. He says, so I'm looking into my own eyes, and the being started speaking out of him, his body. It was a buzzing sound.
Yeah.
So we've got to quit ignoring the data, quit I told Barry Fitzgerald, we're putting lipstick on the pig and saying that this is all loves and lovers and light.
Yeah.
It's not all lovers and light. You know, and we have to get to a point that we understand that, you know, and that's really where I'm at with this. And then I'll shut up and answer questions.
No, that's cool. Carry on. I was listening to it all night. So fascinating. It really is. Right. Go on. We have got about 10 minutes left and 15 questions. So,
all right, let's go to questions.
Yeah, let's do it. Quick fire. What one question? Oh,
done that. Got that one.
I clear it, it comes back up.
It's all right, man.
It's doing my head in. Right. Is the devil their boss?
I don't know if there's an hierarchy. If there is an hierarchy there, it's going to be whoever died first.
Right.
Or whoever died first and learned how to use their knowledge against us who are still embodied. Yeah. That's my answer to that.
Cool. Thank you. Next one again from Rick. What is their end game? World domination? Are they more parasitic?
I don't think they could dominate the world. It's like saying, okay, well, if they're a threat to us, they'd come out and wipe us all out. Like, no. A farmer's not going to go out there and annihilate all of his cattle.
No.
He wants them to keep reproducing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Being farmed.
Was that muted that time?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, no, we didn't hear your illness. It's all good.
Oh, man.
You okay?
Yeah, I took medicine, dude, but it's rough. So, yeah, they don't want to see. Look. They don't have to destroy you if they can distract you.
No.
And that's what's occurring.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of distractions at the moment, isn't there? So, what's really going on? Right. Next question from Ancient Ruby. What does Nathaniel use to remove demons attacking him, or how does he protect himself?
I've said I've never really. I mean, I've faced mental attacks. That's really what I've faced. Nothing physical. And that way, what I do is I get back into my roots, my origins. I watch a lot of Frasier. I mean, this is not going to be, I'm not going to be Malachi Martin here. I love Malachi Martin, and I'm not going to be quoting scripture stuff. I have my own way of dealing with it, just like he did. Yeah. I love Malachi Martin, by the way. I think he's awesome. But so I kind of get back to being a child. I watch my favorite cartoons. And that's only, literally, this is wild. Only when I feel attacked do I do that. It's like, it's so weird. It's a weird thing. I get it. I know. But
I suppose it's going back to your innocence, isn't it, in a way?
It is. And, and I kind of detach myself, my thinking of it, and in that way I kind of self-correct. Now, there have been times, especially in my childhood, where I would whip out a scripture. Or, basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give myself a form of governance. It's my body. It's my mind, not yours. That's really what I do with them.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Next one from Nickname. Do you use traditional methods or biblical?
I do biblical. I think tradition dies screaming. Right. That's the Latin word for religion is religare, to bind by obligation. I don't like to be bound by obligation. I'm a free thinker, and so I find that tradition a lot of times they feed into. Yeah. And they'll play that game all day long until they want something from you, and then you have a problem because the rules change now. So I tend to be more biblical than traditional.
Yep. Cheers. Next one again from Rick. Does Nathaniel detect electromagnetic energy when these entities materialize?
Yes. I had an EQBI case where the entity was laying in between the husband and wife at nighttime. Yeah. And what we were trying to do is we were trying to monitor what I felt compared to the meters. Yeah. And yes, whenever I'd feel it present and coming closer, off the charts, man, off the charts. Wow. So that was a really cool confirmation. I like that. At least I'm not crazy. It's really here. Not that that's a good thing, but at least we can monitor
yeah,
it.
you can confirm it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are ways to do that.
Yeah. Excellent. Next one from Space Cadet. What are Nathaniel's thoughts on frequency-based weaponry that hijack thought streams, quantum resonance tech?
I think our government's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not even possible. It's probable that it's occurring. And it's possibly been tested on us, the general civilian population.
Yeah.
I think it exists. I think, though, that because Will Elizondo gave an answer to that, and I thought it was just, and forgive me, I thought it was lazy research.
Right.
He's like, they had the God helmet. You can put on your helmet and stuff, and you'll experience all this stuff. Yeah, that's not necessarily what Betty Luca experienced.
Yeah.
Right? There's a plethora of things. It can't be explained as that. So I think both phenomena can exist. I think the actual NDE, OBE abduction is occurring, but I also think that there are some frequency-based weaponry, like the Space Cadet just mentioned. So they're both coexisting at the same time.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Next one from Ancient Ruby. What do you think a dogman is, and where do they come from?
Well, I think that I lean towards, again, having a coexisting phenomenon.
Yeah.
Just like with NDEs, these beings can create a near-death experience. It's not a legitimate near-death experience.
No.
It exists, those exist, but what they're doing is they're piggybacking on that reality.
Right.
And so they'll say, okay, that exists, so I'm going to mirror that. I'm going to mimic that and make you believe that's what you're in. So just like that, I think that dogmen, I mean, we have seen a very real, we have cases of very real dogmen manifestation, something that you can collect DNA with. You have footprints, you have scatology. But we also, like we see in Skinwalker Ranch, they can use that to manifest and piggyback. Well, I'm a dogman too. I don't think a dogman smokes cigarettes and wears suits. It's just me. Right? I mean, they go get a pint. What do you guys call it? They're a pint. Go get a beer. That's a little bit different. Yeah. So they could both exist at the same time.
Right. Cool. Thank you. Next one from Space Cadet. We love you. You're a great guest. Salutes.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Sorry,
it's the most questions I've ever answered, dude. I love it. I've never had a show like this, and I'm so impressed.
Excellent. Thank you. No, because everyone puts everything in capitals, so I just stare everything that comes up in caps. Don't actually read it till it comes on screen. But no.
Wow.
Yeah. So cheers.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Next one from Rick Ellen.
We already did that one.
Yeah. See, that's what I mean. They keep popping back up. I have to write to YouTube. They really do, made in. Next one is from Richard Crooks. What's your thoughts on Skinwalker Ranch? Is this place a thin part of a parallel universe?
Yeah, I think there's a lot occurring there that's authentic.
Yeah.
But when Bigelow said we can't dig into the earth because the phenomenon manifests, no, he didn't have mineral rights to the field. Right. He did not buy the mineral rights. So he was telling them not to dig. Duh. This is how muddied it is, So obviously the phenomenon is real there, but I think a lot of people just like hauntings. Let's monetize trauma. Why don't we? Let's go make a movie after it and scare people. Anyways.
Yep. No, cool. Right. Next one is 2 parts. So I'll put the second part up. Have you mentioned the fallen angels?
Yes. Now here's what we have to do. We have to examine what's called comparative literature. What was an angel before we were told what an angel was?
Yeah.
What was an angel? The earliest texts are Ugaritic, Malakuma rather. Malakuma was a deceased ancestor. It was that portion of us that's disembodied. Comes from the Atreus epic, Babylonian flood story, where the ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a god. That tethering, right? They're connected. That's why you can be semi-divine. Some people died, they became angels, because that's that disincarnate ability. You become an Elohim, like Samuel in the Witch of Endor. In the Hebrew, you were an Elohim, you're a god. It wasn't a familiar spirit. It was his apparition. Just like Enoch, who became Metatron, allegedly, he became an angel in his disincarnate reality. So I believe that fallen angels were first embodied, and that's, again, a whole nother show.
No, cheers, thank you. So I'm just going through to make sure I've not missed any, because some of the chat seems a bit all over the place. Right, next one is from nickname again. What does Nathaniel think about the typical paranormal investigations, i.e. spirit boxes, etc.?
Well, I mean, I've had encounters of the spirit box.
Yeah.
I had one investigation where a lady pulled out a spirit box and said, "Who is this young man to my left?" And somebody said, "Nathan." It was a man's voice. And then she said,
Yeah.
"Well, can you tell him hi?" And then a woman started talking, and then a man said, "I've got it. Hey, Nate." Just like that, clear as day. Hey, Nate.
Wow.
So I do believe that, it can connect multiple dimensions. But again, we have these beings with the ability that can mimic and mirror voices of the dead.
Yeah.
So it could be a baiting aspect to it. They could be baiting us while we're doing these investigations. But we are playing with fire.
Yeah.
With them. Each and every time we do an investigation, we're playing with fire.
Yeah. Definitely. Right, next one. No, that's it.
Okay.
We've done. That was bang on time. 2 hours, 2 minutes.
Oh, man. I love that one, dude. That was, I'm telling you what, great questions. And those are the most questions I've ever been able to answer in a show. And yeah, it's refreshing, man. I really enjoyed it.
No, really appreciate you coming on. And the ultimate question, what everyone wants to know, will you come back on in the future?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Excellent.
Codes of the Unknown. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, man. I really enjoyed it. I subscribed. I was going to say hello to everybody in the chats, but it said I had to be subscribed for longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we started back on the show. So yeah, just know, everybody, I love you all, and thank you for tuning in. And I tried to contact you guys to say hi, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, but no doubt that I say there'll be people putting comments in the video once it's uploaded onto YouTube. So if you want to chat in that and answer any more questions that anyone's got, more than welcome.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, people do that, so it's all good. So yeah, massive thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Thank you, Joe, for kind of doing the moderating. Not really seeing her do much, but I'm only messing, winding her up. But no, it's been great having you on. And
thank you, brother.
Yeah, just hope you get your COVID started.
Okay. Dude, it's bad, man. I mean, it's getting better, but I had to stop doing shows, and even my own show, the Ghost Notes, man. I told Rex, like, I can't do it today. I'm sick. Nobody wants to hear coughing, and I don't want to hear myself coughing, so I can't imagine.
No.
So I was like, but yeah, man, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed myself.
No, it's been great. Honestly, I love to have you on. And you're the first demonologist that we've had on. Because normally we do like the paranormal, UFOs, Dogman, like, so you got like Jodie Cook, we had Jessica Jones on about remote viewing. So do you try and do different contexts each week rather than having similar sort of people covering the same field? But no, it's been great. Absolutely loved it. So yeah. So no, it's been amazing. Right, well that's it then. And next week we have Mr. Barry Fitzgerald. I'm sure you've all heard of him.
Oh yeah.
I know I'm a bit nervous for that.
Yeah, he's cool. He's real cool.
Yeah, no, he seems all right. I've been chatting to him a little bit as well, so it's all good. So yeah, everyone have a great weekend. And just before I go, depending on how I'm feeling next week, there may be a live investigation. So what it is I know the owner of a coffee shop in the city where I live, and it was built over 400 years ago. The same family owned it for over 150 years, and there's been a couple of investigations there in the past, and the same names keep popping up, and two of them are the daughters of the husband and wife that lived there. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on there, and yeah, it's just been refurbed. So fingers crossed, as long as I can walk and drive and get in and out of the car, we'll be going doing that. So that'll be a night time from about 10 p.m. till about 3 a.m. So just hoping I can have the ability to move out of a chair. Then I can do it. Otherwise, it's not going to be till next month. But yeah, other than that, we're going to have Barry with us next Friday. So yeah, massive thank you again, Nathaniel, for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
See you all soon. Take care, everyone, and good night.
All right.